Welcome to the Yankee Cowboy Podcast, coming to you from Dallas, Texas. Here's your host, Tim Wilkins.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Yankee Cowboy Podcast. We have a hot edition, an emergency edition, as I like to call it. Well, Kamala Harris is formally the nominee for the Democratic National Party, more like Communist Party, based on how they did it. But Mr. Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, is going to be her running mate in this election. So before we begin, I kind of want to go through this diatribe of stupidity so everybody in the room can understand the seriousness of the situation that we're walking ourselves into here. Ladies and gentlemen, the national polls are going to tell you a narrative that Donald Trump has lost this election. The national polls across every single news polling outlet is going to tell you that Kamala Harris is up 5 to 6 points. Now, for anyone that's ever paid attention to national politics, knows that many of the pollsters that has showed Donald Trump up in these polls against Joe Biden were very heavily favored towards one side. Obviously, Joe Biden did not poll well within independents. Also, many of these polls were skewed heavily towards the Democrats, and you'll see that with a couple things. The ABC poll, the CNN polls, the Methodist University polls, the collective bargaining of many of the pollsters in the United States heavily. And how you know that is it actually tells you, a good pollster will tell you the statistics of the sample size, and you'll know the skew, as I say. So before we kind of go down this diatribe of stupidity and kind of really go into the policy, I kind of want to talk really straight to the masses of the American people here and understand that the conservatives, the Trump supporters, we know genuinely what we're getting ourselves into here. Is there a little bit of Trump fatigue? Might be. But what thing that Trump needs to do, and it's obviously the month of August here, is that the month of August, their convention is at I believe, the middle of the month, probably around the 22nd. I could be wrong there, but it could very well be in that situation. So when I bring this up and how I discuss things, I want the American people to understand genuinely what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a party that literally removed the candidate for office that had 14 million votes for him in lieu of a person that in the 2020 cycle had less than 3%. I want you to repeat that again. They removed the sitting president of the candidacy for the party. Not because of a medical reason. There's been no disclosure of a medical reason. There's been no Alzheimer's diagnosis. There's not been a situation for office. He just literally is getting kicked out because the donors don't want him. So, and now Kamala Harris has been put on the mantle and formally received the nomination based on the delegate count, which I don't even know how that actually happens. Like, this is not an attack on society as a whole, but how exactly do you get the delegates if you have not had a primary? That's the overwhelming dilemma that I have. There hasn't been no Gavin Newsom. There's no Gretchen Whitmer. There's no there hasn't been any other candidate at that point that came out and try to walk this back. I just feel like that's the Democratic ticket. Now, Trump has actually let this play out patiently because he knows that he has defeated Joe Biden. The problem now that he has is that his formidable foe here isn't Joe Biden anymore. It's the Democratic National Party and the machine that it is. And once that machine is organized, he's going to have one hell of a time because they have the war chest, they have the TV ad buys. It's going to be like Hillary Clinton all over again. He understands that. The difference is policy and messaging. Donald Trump here needs to kind of stay, I would say, kind of focused on message, which is very difficult for him to do at times. When you actually watch his speeches, he does go off prompter. But when he's on prompter, it is deliberate and focused. The ads that are going to come out here now, once Kamala Harris formally has the convention, which will happen here in the month of August, once they get that, she's going to get a push. She's going to get the polls are going to spike her up a little bit. And then all of a sudden, what we're going to see next is the debates. And we're going to see the contrast of policy. The difference is Trump has not gone after her yet because, well, not saying that he doesn't want to. He's waiting. I call him the King Cobra of politics. Trump's policies are what they are. What people don't realize is the King Cobra of policies is what are we better off than we are 4 years ago? That is the elephant in the room. Unfortunately, to many, the question still remains. And many people across this country say absolutely not. Well, you go through the policies of the Biden-Harris administration one by one, and you ask that question. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Inflation. No. When Trump left office, inflation was at a 1.9%. Relatively low. Now, let's be realistic here. The man did pump about $3 trillion of liquidity into the stock market based on bailouts. And I hate to say this, that Democrats want to hold Trump accountable for the deficit, that the increase there. I still ask the question to any Democrat, what would you do in that situation? Would you want people to die? Would you want mortgages to collapse? Would you like the banking system to collapse? What would you like to be done? You were shutting down the government. You were shutting down the country for multiple weeks, almost at months. You were shutting down states at some points. There was going to need some additional governmental assistance at that time. Was that the worst decision? Listen, Trump's going to have to carry that cross to bear across the finish line and explain himself in a manner that is respectful to the American people. If you ask him personally and professionally, I guess he'll tell you the same thing, that he made what he thought was in the best interest of the country when he made that decision. It wasn't about being vindictive or being a policy initiative. That was what was being recommended to him from the doctors and the people across that had obviously better expertise in some of this matter. Not saying that is an excuse, but that is the bona fide facts, Jack. And regardless of what people think, that was a realistic situation on the ground here. Also, gas prices. Gas was around $2-ish a gallon of gas. We're now at $2.99 here in Texas. We have been up almost at $3.50. Every 24-hour cycle, it changes pretty drastically here. Okay. Energy independence is not our forte anymore. We're reliant on foreign oil, and that is not something that many Americans wish to have. They want to be energy independent, and we deserve to be so, being one of the nations, the leaders of the free world. Now, the next issue is something that I think collectively across the masses of the American people have a unique challenge to communicate this message about the difference between both parties, and that is abortion rights. Now, as a conservative male, who am I? And this is the same thing I said during COVID. A person's right is a person, is your ability, your body is your ability to tell in how you manage it is on your own free will. I'm not going to tell you to get a vaccine, but if you so choose to do so, that's up to you. Now, the same goes with me personally and my viewpoint on abortion. I may have my views personally on the issue, but that doesn't solve any of them. They have to be delegated, elected, then obviously legislated by the states. And Trump obviously has a huge, I would say, one up here. And Roe versus Wade is a very divisive issue between the federal mandate compared to a states' rights issue. He tries to walk that dog very well and very candidly. But I think the challenge of the party, the Republican Party nationally, is that up until the point of the change of the leadership, they could not be on point or on message across the country. If you ask a senator or a House of Representative member, they have different viewpoints. The talking points were completely all over the place. At one point, they wanted an ultimate ban, or they wanted a 5-week ban. They were all over the place. The exceptions, and Donald Trump lays out the tale. He lays out the story. He's obviously in favor with the exceptions, and that's where he is. Now, the abortion issue on the Democratic Party side is pretty extreme, and I'm not trying to paint them that way in this issue, but they really are. The way some of these state governors have allowed some of their laws to get to that point, and now this is where we're gonna try to paint the tale, as I say, on the VP candidate, Mr. Tim Walz. Okay, and I really want people to understand this. This is coming directly from Politico. And this is where it's really, really important, ladies and gentlemen, to do your research and not just use one source all fits all on everything. And I will literally candidly talk about this because people on both sides of the aisle tend to just not give a flying crap about their sources or where they get their information from, and believe the hyperbolic chamber that is Twitter. And I really, or X, as whatever you want to call it. But let's talk about this. The one thing that is universally across the board, Tim Walz had some very, very, very hyperbolic viewpoints on abortion, and to the point where even Hillary Clinton told him to lay off his message. There's a video on that being posted currently all over, and I think the IVF narrative that is it's very a different tale of narrative, and I think even Trump says he believes in IVF. So the paint they try to paint him in that story yesterday when they finally got on stage and talked, but I think he's obviously a pro-abortion rights advocate, and he had obviously Kamala Harris in Minnesota in 2023, and obviously he the reason why he supports IVF is because he had his daughter via IVF, and I don't think anyone in their right mind is against IVF. And there are some really hard right conservatives that don't believe in it, which is fine, but that's not the overwhelming part of the party. And I think that's an issue that the Democrats need to kind of just stop alienating the world on that issue. A lot of people don't enjoy that topic. That is not a topic that, even for me in high school, was a fun topic to talk about. Because we're not doctors, we're not scientists, but at the same time, we believe in, autonomy of your body, but at the same time, as a guy, I'm a personal choice type of person where, listen, as a guy, you have many choices around the world to who you're going to have relations with. Guess what, dude? Protect yourself, protect your significant other, and move about your life in that manner. I don't think it's a difficult thing to talk about, but also we have a crisis in this country about, you know, having kids. Uh, child rates or birth rates are a little lower this last couple of years. So I think there's a significant thing that we need to discuss. Walz's issues as a VP candidate, obviously they talk about VP candidates being somewhat, not really a big deal. But in his reality, what he is doing, being on the ticket with Kamala Harris, is legitimizing a radical agenda, a very radical liberal agenda. He's pro gay rights, he's pro globalism, he's pro he really truly he's environmentalist. He's you know education is probably one of his best issues realistically. um but at the same time, his tax policies when it comes to refundable child tax credits is probably the most progressive tax policy in the United States. So he's, you know, and also the big thing that he did do is he also slashed taxes for Social Security recipients in the state, which is insane if you think about it, because a lot of people accumulate high spend means there's cuts in other measures, and there wasn't any. There was cut in taxes. So what he did was he raised taxes on raised hundreds of billions of dollars on a global tax of multinational and that's where it, it's a unique conversation, because obviously the guy is trying to do some, I would say, off the beaten path initiatives that might work for his constituents, but nationally some of these policies aren't going to fly. And I think like I said, his best attribute to the ticket is his stance on education. He has a very he's been all over the place on policy when it comes to he's a very left-wing guy. And he's also raised sales taxes to support rental assistance programs for children. He's you know he is all over the place when it comes to taking care of his constituents, but has no issue raising taxes on his constituents either. And you know, listen, business is in Minnesota. Target, who is one of the largest retailers around the globe, he's still there. Um, it's just a unique experience, and I think the Trump Vance ticket's going to have to really they're going to paint this picture that's going to be very clear. And I think we as a as a as a an elector as an elector, it really have to kind of go, okay, ooh, doesn't answer the question. Next, like it's we're almost like being gaslit, and we kind of have to take a pause and kind of evaluate. And I mean that respectfully. Got to pause and take a second, take a breather, and reevaluate. Trump Vance versus Kamala Harris and Walz. And I think legitimately we have ourselves a race. Now, you remove all the bullshit, you remove all the tomfoolery, and you go at it on a policy initiative and not so much a personality contrast. Who do I want to be in the office of the presidency of the greatest country in the world? There's only one man. or woman. The person I will still vote for is Donald Trump. And I'll explain really candidly why. Policy trumps all. Because just like the last 4 years, you can ignore the hyperbolic chamber and the gaslighting that is on social media all day, every day, and still live your life. What you cannot do is avoid the negativity and the downtrodden that this country has gone through during the Biden-Harris administration. We as a society have to recover from that. Not just economically, not just strategically, but also culturally. If you go on X right now, if you're a conservative right now, I've been hit with every single Kamala Harris ad. I've been hit with every single left-wing person on my algorithm. For what? There's no need for that. I'm not a fan on any one of those situations. White guys for Harris? Give me a break. You can try to put lipstick on a pig, ladies and gentlemen. It's still a pig. The policies that the left will bring to this country didn't do well the first time, are not going well the next time. The difference is we know what we have. We know what we have with Trump. Guess what? After 4 years of another term, we'll go back at this again. And this time, we'll bring a youth to the ticket. The party owes the American people that too. I think what we're seeing right now is 4 candidates for the highest 2 president and vice president of the United States that are uniquely challenged in many ways. Youth, lack of experience on the, on the executive side of the branch of the government, some on the legislative side. But one thing I have not talked about is the lack of experience, really, when it comes to foreign policy. And I think Trump's foreign policy experience here is really going to come to full circle and help him win. Also, I really truly believe that the American people haven't forgotten what happened when Trump was in office. Is there some empathy there? Absolutely. But at the same time, they're going to vote with their wallet before they vote with their emotions. I still genuinely believe that. We will still see that time and time again. Don't always believe the polls. The polls showed him down against Hillary Clinton by 10 plus points in some of these states leading into this election, which he won. I think he will win again. But this time, a different way. His own way. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you joining me on this discussion. And I really do genuinely believe that is a huge bona fide issue across this country that we have to seriously decide upon who will run this country for 4 years. And I hope you will continue to join me along this path. We have another month and we have another 120 days until our election day or month, however you want to talk about it. But at the end of the time, take care of yourself and each other the best way you can. Keep working hard. Watch your stock market, watch your 401ks, and let your decisions be made. If you can vote early, please do it in person. I won't tell you who to vote for, but I will recommend that voting early gives you an opportunity to work around your schedule. I mean, everybody has a different schedule nowadays, especially with kids, and you might have practices and events and things to take your kids to, and, pre-existing situations, and having an open early voting policy and across the states really helps people be engaged with their doing their civic duty as a citizen of this country by voting. And I think everyone should. I hope everyone does vote for the candidate that they wish they really truly want to run this country. And I hope every single person across this country does do their civic duty, because I think as one country we can really truly become better each and every single day. And it takes all of us rowing that boat together. So appreciate you joining me as always. Thank you very much. Hope we're going to have a good week. It's hopefully stock market's rebounding. But other than that, guys, have a good week. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Yankee Cowboy Podcast. Feel free to follow us on social media via Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.